Welcome back to l.louise Painting Tutorials. In this video, we're going to paint moss and rocks. For this video, I've painted the background with the blue and some white up at the top, shading down into a dark. I've done the dark underneath, and we'll paint the moss on top of it. But first, we'll paint the rocks. And I'll use some brown for the underneath. And then we'll do the texture on top with the knife. I'm going to just go ahead and paint this whole rock brown. I'm doing it very loosely. All the texture and detail is going to come from the palette knife. As you can see, the background is done very loosely too. I've added a few colors here and there. I think there's a little purple, and this is probably orange and purple in there. Okay, I'm going to connect these rocks. That'll make a little better composition. Okay, now we're going to add some white. We'll do the top of the rocks. I'm going to let this kind of mix, so I'm going over it a few times to mix the brown into the white, and that'll give us that tan color. And when you get the rocks with some basic texture, then we'll add the moss on top of that. Here's our lovely palette knife texture. That's something that's so much fun to experiment with. And if you don't like the way something has come, you just take and scrape it all off and re-put it back on there. I was painting on a big painting one time, and I had to scrape off, and I scraped off, and I scraped off, and I had a blob about this big of a basic muddy gray color. And what I did with that is I put it on another canvas, and I pulled it up like this, and I got all kinds of good texture for the next rocks that I painted. So one thing we have to remember is it's never a loss. Okay, lift this up so we can get this knife off the edge of the canvas here. Okay, we have our basic rock shapes. Now we're going to put moss in between and on top. I'm going to start with a darker green color. Actually, a pretty dark green color. And here's some moss. We'll just cut that moss in around the edge of the rocks. A little bit more moss. And I'm going to take the brush and blend that off the edge, just so it's not too distracting to have those edges. When we have softened edges like that, it gives a little bit of a vignette effect, which works out pretty well for a painting that's in this tight with a simple composition. It focuses our eye. Okay, we have our basic moss. I'm actually going to turn that back into ground underneath. A little bit more. I'm going to take a smaller knife and just add a few pebbles here. Grab some of our brown. Just for interest. Smaller brush. Smooth it out a little bit. A little bit of a reflection. Okay, and now I'm going to use the knife again, and I'm going to put some highlights to the moss. So I'm going to get a pretty light yellow-green color. And I'm putting the knife on and kind of pulling it up a little bit. That gives a little bit more of a finer texture that's kind of, I guess, moss-like. And there would be a little bit of a shadow coming there, so we'll do a little bit more highlights here. And we could go in and do more detail if we want. But this is the basic technique I use for painting moss around rocks. I'll just soften that edge a little bit more. And there we have our moss and rocks. And there we have our moss and rocks painting. Thank you for watching l.louise painting tutorials. And I hope it was helpful for you. Happy painting!